Hey, my name's Marcus Cole. I'm 29 years old and I've been grinding away as a financial analyst at Ashford Capital for the past 6 years. It's not the glamorous Wall Street life you see in movies, more like endless spreadsheets, late nights staring at market trends, and the occasional high stakes meeting where everyone pretends they know exactly what's going on. I live in a modest one-bedroom apartment in East Baltimore, the kind of place that's affordable but not much else. The walls are thin, the kitchen's cramped, and the view out my window is mostly other brick buildings and the occasional glimpse of the harbor if I crane my neck just right. It's home, though, or at least it's where I crash after those 12-hour days. That night was no different from most. The rain had started in the afternoon, a steady downpour that turned the city into a blurry mess of wet streets and reflected headlights. By midnight, it was still coming down hard, drumming against my window like it had no intention of stopping. I'd finally powered down my laptop after wrestling with a report that refused to balance. Numbers danced in my head. Projections for the next quarter, risk assessments that could make or break deals worth millions. I was beat, but sleep wasn't coming easy. My mind kept wandering to Zoe, my 7-year-old daughter. She lives with her mom across town, and our weekends together are the highlight of my week. But lately, even those felt strained, with her asking questions I didn't have good answers for, like why I worked so much or when we'd get a bigger place. I was just about to turn off the lamp and force myself to bed when the knocking started. Not a polite tap, urgent, insistent raps that echoed through the quiet hallway. My heart jumped. Who the hell knocks at nearly 1 in the morning? In this building, late-night visitors usually meant trouble. A neighbor locked out, or worse. I hesitated for a second, then padded over to the door in my socks, peering through the peephole. What I saw didn't make sense at first. A woman, drenched, her face partially obscured by wet hair. She looked familiar but out of context, like seeing a celebrity in a grocery store. I unlocked the door and swung it open, the hallway light spilling into my dim apartment. She lifted her head, and that's when it hit me. Victoria Ashford, my direct boss. The woman who ran our floor with an iron fist wrapped in velvet. Sharp, unyielding, always 3 steps ahead. At 45, she was the epitome of corporate power. Tailored suits, flawless presentations, and a reputation for turning failing portfolios into gold. I'd seen her command boardrooms, dismantle arguments with a single raised eyebrow, and never once show a crack in her armor. But the woman standing on my doorstep wasn't that Victoria. Her hair was plastered to her neck, dark strands clinging like they'd given up. Her usual designer dress was soaked through, clinging awkwardly and wrinkled beyond recognition. No shoes. She stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, her feet pale and vulnerable. Her makeup, if she'd worn any, was long gone, leaving her eyes red-rimmed and raw. She clutched her bag like it was a lifeline, knuckles white. Marcus. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper, hoarse like she'd been shouting into the wind. I didn't know where else to go. I stood there, frozen for a beat. How did she even know where I lived? HR files? It didn't matter. Questions piled up in my mind. Why me? What happened? But none of them came out. Instead, I stepped aside. Come in. She hesitated, then crossed the threshold, bringing the chill of the rain with her. Water dripped from her clothes onto my entryway rug, pooling in small puddles. I closed the door behind her, the sound of the rain muffling to a distant roar. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, her presence filling it in a way I wasn't prepared for. Here, I said, grabbing a clean towel from the linen closet. She took it with trembling hands, pressing it to her face like she could wipe away more than just the water. I moved to the kitchen, flicking on the kettle out of habit. Routine helped in moments like this, something normal amid the chaos. As the water heated, I pulled down 2 mugs, the chipped ones I used every day. Tea bags went in, and I paused at the jar of honey. I remembered from those endless meetings. She always took her coffee sweet. No one else noticed, but I did. Little details like that stuck with me. When I brought the mug over, she was perched on the edge of my sofa, still clutching the towel. Her eyes flicked to the honey swirling in the tea, and something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe gratitude. Thank you, she murmured, wrapping her hands around the mug for warmth. We sat in silence for a while, the rain the only soundtrack. It wasn't awkward exactly, more like the quiet before a storm breaks fully. She sipped slowly, her shoulders gradually relaxing, though the tension in her jaw remained. Finally, she set the mug down and looked at me. Really looked, like she was deciding if I was worth the risk. I thought about this for hours, she said, her voice steadier now but still edged with exhaustion. Driving around in the rain. And I ended up here because, you're the only one who's ever told me the truth when it mattered. I leaned back, processing. 3 years ago, during the Mercer deal meltdown, a multi-million-dollar flop that nearly tanked the firm, I'd been the junior analyst in the room. Everyone else nodded along, feeding her what she wanted to hear. Market volatility, unforeseeable risks. But I'd spoken up. We ignored the warning signs, I'd said, meeting her gaze. She'd stared me down, and for a moment, I thought I'd be fired. But she hadn't. Instead, she'd pivoted the strategy, salvaging what she could. You didn't back down, she continued, a faint smile ghosting her lips, even when it could have cost you everything. Before I could respond, her composure cracked. Her shoulders shook and tears spilled over, silent at first, then in quiet waves. She didn't sob, just let them fall, mixing with the steam from her tea. I didn't move to comfort her. It felt like crossing a line she wasn't ready for. Instead, I sat there, close enough to show I was listening, far enough to give her space. That night, as the rain pounded on, I realized something profound. Our worlds, her empire of boardrooms and mine of quiet survival, had collided in my tiny apartment. And in that collision, everything was about to change whether we wanted it to or not. The morning light filtered through my blinds slowly, gray and muted from the lingering clouds. I stirred on the couch. I'd given her my bed without a word last night, and rubbed my eyes, the events of the previous hours crashing back like the rain that had finally eased. The apartment smelled different. Coffee brewing, something sizzling on the stove. I sat up, confused for a second, then heard the soft clink of utensils from the kitchen. I patted in quietly. There she was, Victoria, standing at my tiny stove, her back to me. She'd changed into one of my old button-up shirts. It hung loose on her frame, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows, and a pair of sweatpants I'd left out. Her hair was still damp from a shower, falling in loose waves now, and she moved with a focused efficiency, flipping eggs in my worn skillet. It was surreal seeing her like this. The untouchable CEO reduced to someone making breakfast in a stranger's kitchen. Or maybe not a stranger anymore. Sorry if I'm overstepping, she said without turning, sensing my presence. I couldn't just sit there, idle hands and all that. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. No, it's fine. Smells good. She glanced over her shoulder, offering a small, tentative smile, the first real one I'd seen from her. I hope you like your eggs over easy. It's all I could manage with what you have here. We sat at my rickety kitchen table, the one I'd picked up at a thrift store years ago. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still dripped, puddles forming mirrors on the sidewalks below. She pushed a plate toward me. Eggs, toast she'd somehow toasted without burning, and a mug of black coffee. For herself, she'd made tea again, stirring in a spoonful of honey from my cabinet. We ate in companionable silence at first, the clink of forks the only sound. But I could feel the weight of unspoken words building. Finally, she set her fork down and met my eyes. I owe you an explanation. Last night? It wasn't planned. I drove for hours in that storm, and somehow I ended up here. You don't have to explain, I said, but she shook her head. I do. Because you're the only person in that entire company who's ever been straight with me, even when it could have cost you your job. She paused, tracing the rim of her mug. 3 years ago, with the Mercer deal, everyone else fed me excuses, but you? You looked me in the eye and called it what it was. A mistake we could have avoided. I nodded, remembering the tension in that room. I figured someone had to say it. And when I pushed back, you didn't fold. You stood your ground. Her voice softened. That's rare, Marcus. In my world, people tell you what you want to hear to stay in your good graces. But you didn't care about that. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I just believe in doing the work right. No point in sugarcoating failures. She leaned back, her expression turning inward. Last night, I found out my brother, Charles, has been undermining me for months, pulling strings with the board, leaking information, all to force me out. He's always resented me taking the lead after our father stepped down. But it was a betrayal I didn't see coming. I listened, piecing it together. Charles Ashford was a fixture in the upper echelons, charming on the surface but ruthless underneath. I'd seen him in meetings, always smiling while he maneuvered. That's heavy, I said. Family should have your back. Should, she echoed bitterly. But in our family, it's always been about power. I built Ashford Capital from a struggling firm into what it is today, sacrificing marriages, time with my daughters. Everything. And now he's trying to take it all away. She told me more then, opening up in a way I never expected. About growing up in a wealthy but cold household in Connecticut, where emotions were weaknesses and success was the only currency. Her first marriage at 22 to a fellow heir who cheated and left her with 2 young girls. How she'd clawed her way up in finance, earning her MBA while working 2 jobs, proving herself in a man's world. Her daughters, now in college abroad, were her pride, but the distance weighed on her. I thought if I was strong enough, nothing could touch me, she admitted. But last night, I broke. I shared a bit too, surprising myself. About my own divorce 5 years ago, how my ex took Zoe and moved across town, leaving me with visitation rights and a mountain of doubt. The long hours at Ashford to make ends meet, the quiet nights wondering if I was enough as a father. I know what it's like to feel invisible, I said. To know you're right, but get overlooked anyway. She nodded, her eyes meeting mine with a new understanding. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? I thought for a moment. Stand your ground, but don't do it alone. And don't let them turn you into something you're not. When she left later that morning, dressed in her dried clothes, her posture was straighter, the exhaustion in her eyes tempered by resolve. At the door, she turned. Thank you, Marcus, not just for the shelter, but for letting me be human for once. I watched her go, the elevator doors closing behind her. As I cleared the table, the apartment felt emptier, but something inside me had shifted. A quiet alliance formed in the aftermath of the storm. 3 days after that stormy night, an email pinged in my inbox during lunch. It was from HR summoning me to the 19th floor, the executive suite, a place I'd only glimpsed during company tours. My stomach twisted. I wasn't naive. Victoria's visit hadn't gone unnoticed, or maybe this was unrelated. But deep down, I knew better. I finished my sandwich, a bland turkey on rye from the deli downstairs, and headed up, the elevator ride feeling longer than usual. The doors opened to polished marble floors and glass walls that screamed money. A receptionist with a tight smile led me to a conference room overlooking the harbor where 3 people waited. Charles Ashford, Victoria's brother, lounging at the head of the table like he owned the place, which in a way he did. Henderson, my direct supervisor, fidgeting with his tie, and a woman I recognized as the head of HR, her expression neutral as a blank spreadsheet. Mr. Cole, have a seat, Charles said, his voice smooth, almost friendly. He was in his early 50s, silver hair slicked back, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I'd seen him around the office, always with that predatory charm, the kind that made you wonder what deals he sealed behind closed doors. I sat, keeping my face impassive. What's this about? Charles leaned forward, steepling his fingers. We appreciate you coming up on short notice. We've been reviewing some internal matters, and we think you could be a valuable asset in moving the company forward. He slid a folder across the table. I opened it. A promotion letter outlining a new title, Senior Analyst, with a salary bump that made my eyes widen. Double what I was making now. A private office on the 15th floor, stock options, even relocation assistance if I wanted a nicer place. It was everything I'd quietly dreamed of. Stability for Zoe, maybe even a down payment on a house someday. Sounds generous, I said carefully. What's the catch? Henderson cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. No catch, Marcus. Just an opportunity for someone with your skills to shine. Charles smiled wider. We're restructuring leadership. Victoria's done a fine job, but the board feels it's time for fresh perspectives. We need insights from the trenches, people like you who've seen the day-to-day. If you could provide some details on past decisions, confirm certain oversights, it would go a long way. There it was. The Mercer deal flashed in my mind again, along with other moments where Victoria had pushed boundaries. They wanted me to throw her under the bus, testify to her mistakes, paint her as unfit. I closed the folder. And if I don't? The room chilled. Charles's smile faded. Let's not go there yet. Think about your future. Your daughter, Zoe, right? This could mean better schools, security. We know life's not easy out there. How did they know about Zoe? HR files, probably. But it felt invasive, a veiled threat. Then HR slid another envelope over. Photos, grainy shots of Victoria's car parked outside my building that night. Her stepping out in the rain, even one of her at my door, time-stamped. We have to consider appearances, she said softly. Personal entanglements could complicate things for everyone. Henderson jumped in, his voice oily. Marcus, you've been overlooked too long. This is your chance. Stand with the board and doors open. Oppose it. Well, loyalty's a two-way street. I stared at the photos, my mind racing. The promotion dangled like bait. Enough to cover Zoe's braces, summer camp, maybe even college savings. I'd scraped by for years, invisible in meetings, my ideas credited to others. But then I thought of Victoria on my sofa, tears falling silently, trusting me because I'd once spoken truth to power. Selling her out now? That would make me no better than Charles. I appreciate the offer, I said, pushing the folder back. But no, I'm not interested in playing games. Charles's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake, son. Think it over. I stood. I have. The fallout came fast. By afternoon, my access card was deactivated. An email from HR. Suspended pending investigation into potential conflicts of interest. My desk was cleared out by security while I watched, colleagues whispering behind my back. Whispers turned to rumors, blog posts popped up on finance gossip sites. Ashford exec's late-night rendezvous with junior staff, with photos attached. My phone buzzed with unknown numbers, reporters digging for dirt. One even showed up at Zoe's school, asking her questions until a teacher intervened. That night, I picked Zoe up from her mom's, her little face confused. Daddy, why did a lady ask if you have a girlfriend at work? My ex gave me a look that could cut glass, muttering about dragging our daughter into your mess. I took Zoe home to my apartment, made her favorite mac and cheese, and tucked her in. But sleep evaded me. I paced, staring at the rain-slicked streets below. The threats weren't empty. Job prospects tanked overnight, my LinkedIn flooded with speculative comments. Bills loomed, rent, child support, the medical debt from Zoe's ear infection last year. Part of me regretted not taking the deal, but deeper down, I knew. Folding now would mean teaching Zoe that integrity was negotiable, and I couldn't live with that. A text came in late from an unknown number. Stay strong. Truth wins, V. I didn't reply, but it steadied me. The storm in the power corridors had just begun, and I was caught in the eye. After the meeting on the 19th floor, the days blurred into a haze of uncertainty. I found myself suspended in limbo. No access to my work email, no assignments trickling in, just a vague HR notice about an ongoing review. Bills didn't care about investigations, though. Rent was due, child support payments loomed, and Zoe's school fees were piling up. I dipped into my emergency savings, a pitiful fund I'd scraped together over years of overtime, and started freelancing, picking up odd analysis gigs on platforms like Upwork. The pay was sporadic, barely enough to keep the lights on, but it was something. Every rejection email stung, especially when recruiters ghosted after a quick LinkedIn search revealed the swirling rumors. Zoe noticed the change immediately. Daddy, why are you home all day? She'd ask during our weekends, her big eyes full of innocent curiosity. I'd force a smile, ruffle her hair, and say, just some grown-up stuff at work, kiddo. It'll sort itself out. But inside, doubt gnawed at me. The photos and gossip had spread like wildfire. Anonymous posts on finance forums labeling me as the ambitious underling or worse. Strangers messaged me on social media, some accusing, others probing for dirt. One night, a reporter called my ex, fishing for quotes about my character. She hung up furious, texting me, "Fix this, Marcus, for Zoe's sake." Amid the chaos, a cryptic note arrived in my mailbox. No stamp, just my name scrawled on the envelope. Inside, "Meet me at Patterson Park, by the boathouse, sunset. V." I went, heart pounding, scanning the paths for anyone tailing me. The park was quiet, joggers thinning out as the sun dipped low over the harbor. Victoria appeared from the shadows of a willow tree, dressed in a simple trench coat and jeans, far from her power suits. She looked weary, lines etched deeper around her eyes, but there was a fire there too. We walked along the water's edge, the lapping waves masking our voices. "The board's closing in," she said, her tone measured. "Charles has them convinced I'm unstable, leaking emails, twisting old decisions. The press is eating it up. Ashford Ayres meltdown, that's tomorrow's headline." I nodded, sharing my side. The suspension, the harassment, Zoe's questions. "They're trying to break us both." She stopped, pulling a slim folder from her bag. "This is proof. Financial trails showing Charles embezzling from subsidiary funds, manipulating reports to sabotage deals. I didn't get it easily. It cost favors I can't repay. But I'm not asking you to use it. I just wanted you to know the truth exists, even if they bury it." I took the folder, feeling its weight. "Why me?" "Because you've been burned by this too. And because that night at your place, you reminded me what integrity looks like." She paused, vulnerability cracking through. "My childhood was a battlefield. Father pitting us siblings against each other for approval. No warmth, just wins. I built this company to prove I was more than that, but now I'm tired, Marcus. If fighting means dragging you and your daughter down further, maybe I should step aside." Her words hung in the air, the sunset painting the water orange. I thought of Zoe's trusting face, of the years I'd swallowed pride to provide for her. "No," I said firmly. "Fight with the truth. Don't let them win by default. The cost is high, but backing down now? That teaches the wrong lesson, to me, to Zoe, to everyone who's ever been overlooked." She searched my eyes, then nodded. "You're right, but promise me. Protect your family first." We parted ways, no hugs or dramatics, just a shared glance that said enough. The months that followed were a grind. Victoria faced down the board in marathon sessions, debunking lies one by one, rallying allies with cold facts and unyielding poise. She nearly cracked once, calling me late one night. I almost signed the resignation today. But she didn't, drawing strength from our talk. For me, it was survival mode. Freelance dried up as rumors spread. I took a part-time gig at a coffee shop to make ends meet, ignoring the stares from former colleagues who'd spot me there. Zoe came home one day with tears. "Kids at school said you're in trouble because of a lady boss." I held her, explaining in simple terms. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people mad, but it's still worth it. We baked cookies that night, her laughter a balm against the storm. Quietly, I supported Victoria from the shadows, sending anonymous tips via encrypted email, old data analyses that bolstered her case without implicating me. She never asked, I just did it. Harassment peaked, slashed tires on my car, more online vitriol. But I didn't bend, neither did she. As the pivotal board meeting loomed, the one where her evidence would drop like a bomb, I felt a quiet resolve settle in. We'd both been tested, pushed to the edge, but we'd held. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt winnable. The board meeting dragged on for hours, a tense showdown in the glass-walled room overlooking the harbor. Victoria presented her evidence methodically, financial trails, emails, timestamps that painted Charles as the architect of the sabotage. Whispers rippled through the room as the projections lit up the screen, showing embezzlement from subsidiaries, manipulated reports designed to make her look incompetent. Charles tried to counter, his charm cracking into defensiveness, but the facts were ironclad. By the end, the vote was unanimous. He was out. Forced resignation, stripped of his shares, his reputation in tatters. The room emptied in stunned silence, and as I watched from the sidelines, invited as a witness at Victoria's insistence, I felt a weight lift, though the scars remained. In the aftermath, the company didn't just survive, it transformed. Victoria stayed on as CEO, but she pushed for changes, diversity initiatives that amplified voices like mine, transparent audits, and a culture where truth wasn't punished. Whispers of reform spread through the halls, more promotions from within, mentorship programs for underrepresented staff. It wasn't overnight, but it was real. For me, the call came a week later. Full reinstatement, with a public apology from HR and Henderson. "We value your integrity," the email read, though I knew it was lip service. Still, the new title, Head of Analytics, came with real authority, a team under me, and a salary that meant I could finally breathe. No more scraping by. I could afford Zoe's dance classes, a savings account for her future. Life settled into a new rhythm. Freelance gigs faded as I dove back into work, but now my input mattered. Meetings where my analyses shaped decisions, not just filled reports. Zoe noticed the shift too. "Daddy, you smile more," she said one evening, her head on my shoulder as we watched cartoons. I hugged her tight, grateful for the stability that let me be more present. Her mom and I even worked out better visitation. Weekends turned into full weeks sometimes, the tension easing as the rumors died down. Victoria and I, we didn't become something dramatic. No whirlwind romance, no secrets whispered in corners. Instead, a friendship bloomed, quiet and steady. It started with a thank you lunch in a nondescript cafe near the office, where she slid an envelope across the table, my back pay plus a bonus. "For standing firm," she said. From there, it grew. She'd text occasionally, "Coffee after hours?" We'd meet in neutral spots at first, talking about everything, the Mercer fallout, her daughter's latest adventures abroad, my dreams for Zoe. She opened up more, stories of her ex-husband's betrayal, the loneliness of the C-suite, how she'd nearly lost herself in the pursuit of power. One evening, she showed up at my apartment unannounced, a bottle of wine in hand. "I hope this is okay," she said, glancing around. Zoe was there that night, coloring at the table. Victoria's eyes softened. "And who's this artist?" Zoe beamed, showing off her drawing, a rainbow house with stick figures. They bonded instantly. Victoria knelt down, praising the colors, sharing stories of her own girls at that age. From then on, her visits became occasional rituals. She'd bring ingredients for homemade pasta, teaching Zoe to knead dough while we chatted. No pressure, no expectations, just easy companionship. On her desk now sits a framed photo of a mug of hot cocoa with marshmallows, a nod to that rainy night. "A reminder," she told me once, "that vulnerability isn't weakness." I keep a similar one on my nightstand, a quiet symbol of the turning point. We'd sip tea sometimes after Zoe's bedtime, reflecting on how far we'd come. "You didn't just save my job," she'd say. "You reminded me why I fight." And I'd reply, "We saved each other." Zoe grew from it too. One night, as I tucked her in, she asked about the lady from work who'd become Aunt Tori in her mind. "She's brave like you," I said. "She taught me that telling the truth, even when it's hard, is worth it." Zoe nodded solemnly. "I want to be brave too, Daddy." Those words healed something in me. The fear that my choices had hurt her faded, replaced by pride. Looking back, that one rainy night reshaped everything. A knock at the door, a moment of humanity amid the storm, led to battles won, alliances forged, and lives mended. Victoria rebuilt her empire stronger. I found my voice. We didn't end up together in some fairy tale way. Just two people who dared to be real, finding strength in shared truth. And in my quiet apartment, now filled with laughter and light, I know. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness flip the script on injustice, turning strangers into allies and darkness into dawn.